Now let's look at modifying a style. Let's go back and inspect with Firebug again. In the style panel here, you'll be able to modify the style that you have for the individual element that is selected. Now this is very useful for tracking down and tweaking the style for a particular case. So if I come over and click onto the value, it's going to allow me to actually change the value here to something else. In this case, 250 pixels, 300 pixels, etc. Now you can also use the arrow keys up and down to tweak this. You can actually, as you move the arrows up and down, it will change the value one at a time. And this can be useful to go to the extent of what you can need. As I make this larger, it's going to be a point at which the floating is going to force these onto second line. So I don't want them big enough to cause them to wrap to a second line. I just want them a little bigger. And so in this case, I could make it, let's say 305, where it still fits. For enumerated values like float, you can certainly put in something like none, which will stop the float, or you can use again the up and down arrows to look to see what all the different values are and see what they actually do. This is going to be a very useful technique to learn CSS, because as you change these values, you may be taking them from a designer or taking them from an example, and you might not know all the enumerated values. For multi-valued rules, this is the same thing applies. Where our cursor is in a multi-valued rule allows us to change the value. So here we can just edit it like it's text. If I wanted to make it, let's say 3 pixels, or 2 pixels, or 0 pixels. But I can also use the arrows to go up and down, and it's just going to change the value that I'm over. So we take that back to 1 and go to solid. We're now going to change between the different kinds of borders. You can also enable and disable individual rules in the style by going to the left to this little gray strikeout and clicking it, and there it takes the style out of the rule temporarily. So as you're working with a style, you may want to figure out which property is causing some perceived problem you're having with your design. This will allow you to quickly isolate which of the rules are causing your particular problem. You can disable more than one or just one at a time. You can arbitrarily add new rules into your style. There's a couple of ways to do this. The first way would be to right-click and say New Property. And in this case, I'll add Display Block. And the other way is to go to the last element in the style and just hit Tab. This will give you that new line and allow you to edit this live. So border radius, let's say 3 pixel. 3 pixel doesn't give us rounded enough, so as I go up, we can see that the border radius is getting smaller or bigger. And I'll leave it about 10. Now what we'll notice is when we click out of the editing process, that the style will order the individual rules alphabetically. So the one you were editing may no longer be at the bottom, maybe somewhere else. And in this case, border radius is now just below border. And it's also taken the individual value I gave and now is giving us a multi-valued result.